steadily it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict. Thanks for coming back to the Lincoln Addict channel and checking out the content. I know I've been a little bit slower lately to get anything out, and it's not that I'm looking to slow down the channel whatsoever. It's just, as I mentioned, I think at the end of the last video, you can kind of see around me, I've been working on a major project, and it's kind of reinventing some space that I had. I went through kind of a transformation with the space late last year, but some things had changed. So I'm kind of been working through that. But rest assured, if you subscribe, I'm definitely going to commit. I've been working on the new episodes of the podcast, which is great. And I'm just trying to pull together some really, really good content for everyone. With that being said, what I want to do is jump in. If you saw the thumbnail on this video, you know we're going to talk about Palm Beach, Barrett-Jackson. All right, so I want to give a shout out to Tom Bennett. He texted me earlier with some intel on this 64 Lincoln custom convertible, and it kind of prompted me. I'm getting ready to go on a trip, and I had been meaning to at least sit down and take a look at some of the cars coming up for Barrett-Jackson Palm Beach. So he kind of got me in gear to go, hey, I had a few minutes and I wanted to knock this video out. It's not going to be extensive. It's going to be more of an overview. Many of you know Barrett-Jackson, that brand, that auction house. They, of course, travel around, and their next stop is this weekend, starting, I think, tomorrow, the 24th of April, through the weekend down in Palm Beach, which is a very affluent area of Florida, definitely a lot of money, and definitely it makes sense to have a stop there. I'll just go by year. I am going to skip the 40 Lincoln, just so you guys know. It's not that I'm not a fan of the other year Lincolns, but my primary focus is the 60s, right? So 61 through 69 typically. So for this, you're going to notice there's 4 Lincolns from the 60s. 2 have Coyote swaps. 1 has an LS engine. Okay, that's a very popular thing at this time. This we can see obviously is a 61 because of the front end rather, the grille and the bumper. We can see it does have a passenger mirror. This was not a factory option, but of course that's going to be like a standard kind of add-on. There's different mirrors out there that will work, and this is one that you'll sometimes see on these different vehicles. What's going to stick out on this build, of course we'll call it a Resto mod, is the fact that it has a custom interior and an LS engine, or excuse me, a Coyote rather. This, you can see it does have the shifter here in the center console. That's what you're typically going to get with a Coyote. And we can see it has custom wheels. Basically a full-blown custom car. The thing I will tell you about this or any other vehicle that's full custom, try to get your eyes on it. Try to get someone to take a look at it that knows what they're looking for. We can see it does have the Dakota digital gauges, which is fantastic. Those are, that's a name brand that's been around a long time. We can see it looks like it has the Colorado custom steering wheel. I'm very good friends with Colorado Custom. They're a friend of the podcast, and that's a great product. We also see that it has aftermarket air conditioning, which is something that we're continuing to see people, instead of working with some of the older stuff, especially with an engine swap, that's something that people are doing. We can see the custom touches taken to the trunk here with the spare tire, with the little item there in between. And overall, looks like a pretty nice car. We can see the top up, the windows down, the hood up, the deck lit up, so on and so forth. We can see, though, one compliment that I want to give Barrett-Jackson is, I'm going through these photos kind of fast now. At the bottom, you see we're on 40 of 76. It was very standard for in the past for me to see very few amount of photos. I don't know if that was just the owners or the sellers rather were submitting very few photos, or if it was just Barrett-Jackson's site not accommodating, but certainly there's a lot more. I would say this is a very, very, very basic air setup. It does have air suspension. You can see it has what we kind of refer to as a manifold here, an air block. Different people call it different things. You've got 2 Viair compressors and a small tank. With a bigger car, it is nicer to have a bigger tank. These are heavy cars. I have 1 tank in my car, and it's not bad, but a lot of people do swear by 2 tanks. We can see, of course, it has the custom interior with the custom seats. The seats kind of replicate a little bit of the shape, at least in the front. The backs do, but of course, it's going to be full custom. The 61s didn't have bucket seats, but as you'd imagine, with doing a resto mod, especially with having to do the bigger tunnel potentially for the transmission, that's a big thing. These custom wheels are wheels that may be something that you appreciate. Maybe you decide to change, but it's very similar, kind of a, I don't want to say a copycat, but it's, we know Colorado Custom was one of the first, if not the first, to do the replica wheels. This looks very similar, but of course it's not a Colorado Custom wheel. Underneath, this car looks pretty clean. We can see everything's painted as you'd want to see. We can see the electronic fuel, or excuse me, the electronic fuel pump, which would have been, key for that fuel injected system. So there are some detailed photos. Again, I'm not going to go in super depth. They also have a decent write-up here where they talk about some of the parts, the CPP brakes, the MagnaFlow stainless steel, so on and so forth. It looks like they're Prestige forged wheels. So those are wheels that you'll see in the Lincoln community, in the Lincoln scene. That's a Saturday car. The next is a 64 convertible. Now, this is the one that my buddy Tom, shout out to Tom, sent me a little bit of intel. He had some boots on the ground down there. And what I'll tell you with this car is it's very similar to what we just saw. It's got custom wheels. I'm not sure that it has air suspension. I don't think that it does. It does have the Coyote swap. It has, kind of the one-off stainless exhaust. Yeah, and it does have, I apologize, it does have full air ride suspension. It has a vintage air system, and it has kind of all the bells and whistles that you would expect out of a custom Lincoln. Now, again, I would suggest anytime you're looking at buying one of these cars or potentially just trying to get more intel on it, have boots on the ground with it. Some of the photos that I saw, it didn't seem like it was totally dialed in, and that sometimes is something that makes me scratch my head because I'm thinking, okay, this description says it has something like 80, let's see, 1,000 hours invested in the build, and for it to go there and maybe just have some little things that you're thinking, hey, it could have just been easily detailed out. That a little bit of a head scratcher, but again, I'm not here to judge the sellers. Just trying to kind of provide as much intel as I can to the potential buyers of these cars. Now, we know in 64, that was the first year that the bucket seats, aka contour adjustable seats, were available. The thing that I would tell you is it's hard to tell if these seats were originally a bench that were cut down. It almost makes it look like it. And a lot of that has to do, more than likely, is with the transmission tunnel. So, depending on the transmission used, for those that do not know, when you do a swap, I've seen some guys keep the transmission tunnel pretty low, but you got to keep in mind, and I'm going to talk more about this in the future, when these cars were engineered, they were engineered in a way that allowed for a very, very low transmission tunnel for the factory car. And that was great because it allowed for more space. And it's just, you don't even realize it when you sit in these cars, there's not a huge transmission tunnel. When you start to motor swap, you're going to get into, and I've seen some very, very high tunnels. A car that I knew a gentleman that was selling a few years ago, it had a huge tunnel in it based upon the drive line. So here, more than likely, what they did is they cut down the front bench seat. It could be bucket seats, and again, I could be wrong on that, but that's something just to kind of keep in mind. You would say, well, what's the big deal? And you go, well, maybe no big deal. My thing would be, do the seats function forward and backwards? If they don't, you might kind of be stuck where the seat's at. You might be able to lay it back some, but then you wouldn't be able to potentially move the seat forward and backwards. Again, that's a little bit of a stretch, but those are the type of things, at least, that I would want you to be thinking about. We can see the carpet in this isn't like a Jim Wallace kit. It's not a factory kind of look, because we see the piping along here. Again, that's a very personal preference. This might be something that you really dig and you go, hey, I don't really care, but that's something I would kind of point out. I think the seat switch over here, or whatever this guy is, I think that would maybe give a little bit of indication that it's not bucket seats, and potentially maybe they've swapped in some different stuff to make this seat go forward and backwards. But again, that's why you would want to be boots on the ground to take a look at a car, especially if you're looking at spending that much. Okay, next we got a 65. This is a sedan. This is LS powered. What we can see from the jump is it looks like it's at a very nice home here. It seems familiar. Maybe we've seen some of these photos in the past, but basically black, which a lot of people want. It has a white interior, has a wheel that may not tickle your fancy, so to speak, with the black on the center. And then you've got that kind of brushed finish, if you will, around the wheel itself. What I like to look at on any time we're looking at a resto mod is looking at the quality, the craftsmanship of the swap. So I like to kind of look in here and see what's going on. Not necessarily a fan of when we start to wrap the dashes like this. You might go, why would someone do this? And you go, well, number one, the word custom, which is not always up to maybe someone's standard. But number two is if this dash pad, for whatever reason, is highly cracked, you would potentially see someone go, hey, let's go ahead and wrap it. That'll cover up the unsightly cracks. Again, I can't say for sure, but I would say looking at this, not my favorite choice of some of the different colors that we're using. Maybe you go white, maybe you go tuxedo kind of look, but you keep the black dash, that type of thing. Again, it's going to be personal preference. We can see this does have tilt column, which is pretty rare over the grand scheme of things. 65, I know I'm kind of going through these photos pretty quick. What you'll notice is obviously you've got the cages on the taillights, and then you've got the front turn signals in that front fender. I've covered the 65 in great detail because many of those do come up for sale over time. Lastly, a 68 Lincoln Continental. This is the 460, which I would say is pretty desirable. Not that the 462 is bad in any way, but certainly the 460 opens up a little bit more with some performance items and things that you can do that you just can't do if you've got the 462 for the most part. There are some extreme, examples where you can, but certainly the 460 kind of just makes it a little bit easier overall. For instance, with heads, and here you can see the valve covers and things like that, easily able to swap some of that stuff out. This may not be the factory 460, even though it says a 460 V8. There were other 460s. And either way, I don't think it's that big a deal, but this car to me looks pretty nice. You've got a good mix between the factory look and a little bit of the styling, a little bit of the hot rod. You've got this air management controller from Airlift, as well as the kind of TV screen, if you will. We can see it does have a fan shroud. You've got this nice little intake setup, if that's something that you like. And then, of course, you've got Dakota Digital, which over the course of time, they haven't just rested their laurels on the earlier 60s. They have included the 66 and up. So it's kind of nice, especially if you're doing a swap of anything, or even if it's a 460, makes it really easy to get all your gauges working if you don't have an expert that kind of lives by you. You do have a custom trunk, which we don't always see the folks, the builders, if you will, of these cars that'll go the extra mile and customize the trunk all the way. You've got some nice exits rather, of the exhaust. I do like to look in here, like I've talked about in the past, with these being pot metal and some of the bright work on these cars. This rear bumper's got some scratches. That's typical for these Lincolns. And again, I think that's being a little bit nitpicky, but this to me has got to be one of the nicer cars, at least online, that I can see here, based upon the few that we just looked at. So with that being said, let me know what you think. If you're going to be in Palm Beach, definitely have a great time. I'm going to be going on a trip to a big truck show. And of course, I balance this podcast with my truck podcast, where I talk about pop culture and a lot of different stuff. That's the ROUR Lifestyle Podcast. I've been working on this major project here. I've been working on some old school BMX stuff. And trust me, although I know I've slowed down just a tad, it may appear, I'm going to keep the pedal stomped with Lincoln Addict. And there's a lot more content to come. Actually, I've done an interview with a gentleman that's into Lincolns as well as trucks, which is perfect for me. So I may cross promote that podcast on both platforms. We shall see. With that being said, everybody stay on the rise, and thanks for the support. ODB, we out here. Peace.
Welcome to LA where the players play, and we ride on them things